Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
In this edition of Global Print, I will talk to you about Pakistan, specifically about the flip-flop in the Pakistani establishment regarding the import of sugar, cotton and yarn from India. You know that this happened a week ago. But before I explain to you why the Pakistanis first said that they would import cotton, yarn and sugar from India and then went back on their own proposal, dear viewer, I'd like to make an appeal to you. Please do subscribe and pay just a little bit for the Print's free, fair, objective, transparent and unhyphenated journalism. You know that we have been bringing to you the best videos, the best news stories these past several months of the pandemic, before and since. So please do continue to support us. The link for the subscription will be in the description of this video, both for an international as well as for a domestic audience. Now back to my column Global Print this week, in which I talk to you about the Pakistani establishment and why it went back. It reversed its own decision in the cabinet on importing sugar, cotton and yarn from India. Now, this happened about a week ago, and perhaps you're au fait already with what happened. But just to recap a little bit, about a week ago, the Pakistani Commerce Ministry, of which Imran Khan is at the head, that's the Prime Minister Imran Khan, said that yes, the Pakistanis will import sugar, cotton and yarn from India. And then just a day after that, at the cabinet, this was reversed. Now, you would wonder why this is happening, because at the cabinet meeting, there were 4 Pakistani ministers who stood up and said, no, this cannot happen because of the situation in Kashmir. And until India reverts to the pre-August 5th, 2019 position, we cannot have anything to do with India. So let me give you the names of these 4 ministers. There was Pakistani Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, the Minister for Railways Sheikh Rasheed, the Planning Minister Asad Umar, as well as the Human Rights Minister Shireen Mazari. And all these people stood up and basically told their own Prime Minister that this decision to import goods from India cannot take place. Now, this was quite startling, because if you look at the history and the background or the political history of all these 4 ministers, you will know that each of them has been elected to power on the back of the support by the Pakistani military establishment. Now, if you see that there is a back channel on between India and Pakistan these last several months, we don't know exactly who the interlocutors are, but it is very widely speculated that on the Indian side, it is led by the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, and on the Pakistani side, it is led by the Pakistan Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa, as well as the Prime Minister's Special Assistant on National Security, who is Moeed Yusuf. He's a young gentleman, very bright, very smart, who returned from the US think tank called the US Institute of Peace some years ago and was immediately catapulted into this very, very powerful position. So you would ask a very natural question, which is that on the one hand, you have the military establishment led by none other than General Bajwa, the army chief, as well as Moeed Yusuf, which is conducting this back channel negotiations with India. And now you have these 4 ministers who dare to stand up to its own military establishment, especially when they have been supported in politics by these men in uniform. So what's going on in Pakistan? So let me tell you what is going on in Pakistan. The first is that the Pakistani military establishment, you can argue, perhaps got cold feet. But let me say that this is just a very temporary measure. So let me tell you what's going on. The first is that there is definitely opposition inside Pakistan. Nawaz Sharif's party, which is the Pakistan Muslim League, has said that when we wanted to make peace with India, when we wanted to extend a hand of friendship, the Pakistani military establishment, led by General Bajwa, basically threw a spanner in the works, and Mr. Nawaz Sharif his government was not just toppled, but he had to flee to London, and now he's in exile over there. And Shahid Khaqan Abbasi, who is the former Prime Minister, also part of the Muslim League, has said very clearly that, okay, this government, that is Imran Khan's government, should talk to India, but tell us what's going on in the Kashmir issue. So he has thrown the gauntlet, and Imran Khan is seeing what's happening. The second is that the Pakistani establishment is is saying that the Imran Khan government is in charge, and they want to put this message out in the international community that it's not us. We are not the ones in charge because, as you know, everybody says that it's the Pakistan army that runs that country. So this message that's being put out is that we are not in charge, it's the civilians which are in charge, and they are the ones who are now debating how to finesse this and how to restart imports from India and perhaps resume a normal relationship. But there is a third reason, and in my view, this is the most important of them all. There is a back-channel negotiation between India and Pakistan that I have already just told you about. And Pakistan, knowing full well that the Modi government revoked Article 370 and integrated Jammu and Kashmir into the Indian Union on the 5th of August 2019, know very well that India is not going to go back on that the Modi government is not going to go back on this pre-August 5, 2019 status. And yet, there is a negotiation, there are talks that are going on between India and Pakistan. Now, what does that mean? Basically, what that means is that the Pakistani establishment, as well as the government, as well as Imran Khan's government, have realized that things are not up to par inside the country. The economy is doing very badly. The Pakistani military understands that they do not want any kind of hostility, leave alone a war, that there is absolutely no space and under no circumstances can the two countries get into some sort of hostility or warlike situation with each other. Because if that happens, God forbid, then the Pakistani army, made up of very brave and very professional men, will not be able to sustain a military conflict. Now, General Bajwa, he's no fool. He's on an extension. He understands that Afghanistan next door is in a state of crisis. The Americans are pulling out. And if the Pakistanis want to replace the Americans in the vacuum that is created, then they need to put their energies there. They simultaneously cannot fight a two-front war or cannot manage a two-front crisis, one with India and the other with Afghanistan. So General Bajwa wants to make peace. And Imran Khan, the Prime Minister, also understands that this is the situation. He knows that Pakistan is broke, that Pakistan has borrowed billions of dollars from its good friends, the Saudis, the UAE, from the Chinese, and the Pakistan-China relationship, which is, of course, a very, very tightly knit, very close knit relationship, China being the patron and Pakistan being the client. Now, how does Pakistan repay or begin to repay all its debts? The IMF is clamping down hard breathing down hard on the Pakistanis. Under the circumstances, the one thing that you can do is to make peace with the neighboring country, which at the end of the day is a pacifist neighbor, a large neighbor that straddles across South Asia. Geographically, it's the largest country in the region. It's economically the largest country in the region. The thinking in the establishment, I believe, both in Delhi and in Islamabad, is that the high commissioners must go back to their respective positions and that the high commissions must be restored to their full strength. Right now, they're only at 50%, which means that Ajay Bisaria, perhaps, or somebody else, perhaps Vikram Mishri, who's India's ambassador to Beijing, his name is being talked about, could become the next High Commissioner to Pakistan. And from the Pakistani side, you could have Moinul Haq, who had already earlier been named as Pakistan's High Commissioner to India, who is currently in Beijing. Or there is also Pakistan's ambassador to Canada, Mr. Tarar. His name is also being mentioned. So once these High Commissioners are in place, then the next steps can be contemplated. Whether there will be a full-blown political process, whether there will be just diplomatic negotiations at the start, the kind of conversation that India and Pakistan as normal neighbors should have could be led then by the respective high commissioners who will then rejoin their stations. All this is now being contemplated. So on the one hand, you had this very big decision by the Pakistani cabinet, which said no talks, no trade, nothing with India until India reverts to the pre-August 5, 2019 position, which is that you go back or you walk back on Article 370. And on the other hand, you have a continuing back channel negotiation between India and Pakistan. So how do you marry the two? And the brunt of my column, Global Print, is that this is what is happening right now. This jockeying, this give and take, these contours of a new deal between the two countries is that how do you save face? How do both countries save face? Both know that it's high time that they begin to talk to each other. Next year, it's going to be 75 years of independence, as well as the partition of the country between India and Pakistan. Prime Minister Modi at the helm, and his RSS, which talks about Akhand Bharat and the vivisection of that. We all know that the traumas of partition, the wounds of partition can only heal if India and Pakistan come to terms with their history and allow each other to live as normal neighbors. In the past, of course, several attempts have been made precisely for this goal, the biggest by Atal Bihari Vajpayee when he went to Lahore in February of 1999. We know what happened after that. There was Kargil, and then history repeats itself again and again, both as tragedy and farce. Can Prime Minister Modi change the course of history? If he can, and we wish him all the luck, then he will go down in history as a player who has dared to do something different. This is Jyoti Malhotra for ThePrint. Thank you so much for watching, and do read my column on the website and let me know what you think.